Okay, folks, welcome to everyone here. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate that. My name is RC. I run the webinar programming here at BuildOps, and BuildOps is what BuildOps is. We built an end-to-end scalable platform that empowers commercial contractors to build enduring businesses. Now, over the next 60 minutes or so, we're going to be able to go over how to structure, sell, and leverage NFPA 70B, which I know is top of mind for all you all. And as your moderators, or I guess call them tour guides, we have Fred Sargent and Toby Mitchell. So, Toby, do you mind introducing yourself for me for a second?
Hey everyone, I'm Toby Mitchell, President Classic Electric Consulting out of California. We've been in business about 15 years, and we're a service and design build based business.
And Fred.
I'm Fred Sargent, also in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Spent many years in the electrical contracting business, and today I'm running an organization called Great Service Forums, which is all about service and maintenance for electrical contractors.
And by the way, that quote you see on that slide right there, that's from Mr. Sargent himself, Fred. So for every contractor who's dreamed about selling maintenance contracts, NFPA 70B is a dream come true indeed. So we'll walk you through all that and how that can be the case. Toby, do you mind moving that slide one over? Okay, so this is the agenda, 3 sessions. We got subject matter experts for each session. Again, you'll see Fred and Toby throughout the entire webinar as well. They'll be your anchor. And so we're going to first start off with structuring service maintenance agreements, go into selling them, and then go a little bit more beyond to the bigger picture on how you can ensure that you're creating a happy customer base and an enduring business beyond just thinking about profits themselves. I mentioned this earlier, but I do want to make sure that you are clear that for contributing any questions, comments, or anything feedback that you want to, please use the Q&A button. I don't think you'll see a chat button, but just please use the Q&A button. We'll get to that as soon as possible. Also, you'll see some polls popping up every once in a while. I think we've got like 3 polls peppered throughout the presentation. If you don't mind taking a moment just to contribute to that, that'd be really helpful for us so we can create better presentations moving forward. And lastly, I'm here right now, but I'm going to be popping off right now. I'll be jumping in every 20 minutes or so to make sure that Fred and Toby are keeping their panelists honest and scheduled, because we know that time is money. So with that, Fred and Toby, and first I believe it's Sean and Gabe will be your first panelists. Thank you so much. And again, use Q&A if you have any questions. Appreciate you all. Fred, Toby?
Awesome. Sure. Well, if the question is structuring your service and maintenance agreement in conjunction with NFPA 70B, there's a lot more involved than just 70B per se, because here you're tying things together with 70E and OSHA and a few other things. And Sean Sampson is somebody who certainly knows this area well. And Sean, where would you start on that subject?
When we talk about, and we were talking about this as we were kind of rolling it and getting ready for today, structuring your service maintenance agreements has everything to do with understanding I guess the inner workings of 70B and 70E, and what do those standards tell us to do in regards to service intervals, in regards to what does it look like to maintain switchgear, drives, motors, MCCs, those types of things. So in structuring your service agreement, your service agreement is going to be built and structured based off of that particular customer's facility and the environment that facility is in, if that makes sense, right? When I'm structuring a service agreement, and I letting you know, everybody that's on the webinar today, if you don't know who I am, I'm also the guy that sold a boatload of service agreements in my time, and have been doing this, did it as a living, selling service agreements, and my own company helping contractors do the same exact thing. So when you look at structuring a service agreement, there's a lot that goes into structuring that service agreement. Understanding that customer's business, understanding how have they in respect to putting together the budget, how have they underfunded maintenance, what is the environment of the assets, the age of the assets, what are they currently spending on other types of service programs. So structuring your service agreement has a lot to do with a lot of the Q&A that you would have with a particular prospect as you're going in and meeting, whether it's with somebody that you're currently doing business with or somebody that that you've never done business with before. So structuring your service agreements has everything to do with understanding what does 70E tell us about the safety side, and what does 70B tell us about how to continue to maintain these service agreements. So I think you're looking at, when we talk about structuring the service agreement, you're looking at two things. How do I get better educated as a contractor? How do I educate myself more on 70B and 70E, because they both kind of go together? And also, how do I approach my existing customers on developing those programs and structuring those? It's all based off of the history of the building. Are they a user? Are they a non-user? What do they spend a year on repairs? What do they budget for failure? All those things are pieces of the puzzle. I hope that makes sense, folks, of structuring these service agreements. But I also have to know what both of these standards tell me in regards to writing that scope of work that's going to help me maintain that building, and how I'm structuring. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
And Toby, you and I know from our experience in electrical contracting, which and yours continues on today, that one of the things we're talking about when it comes to structuring agreements is having the opportunity to structure that agreement. Most of the time in electrical contracting, somebody else has structured the agreement. You're doing something for a construction project with documents and things that somebody else has come up with. Now we're talking about something that you structure for your customers. It's yours, and I'm going to hazard a guess that you're going to do a lot better with an agreement that you structure than one that somebody structures for you. Toby, I'm sure you agree with that based on a lot of current experience that you have.
Yeah, and the key thing, like you said, that these agreements are structured by us. We write and we say what's going to be best, stuff like that. And a lot of times these are our existing customers, so we know their facilities a lot better, right? And for us guys that do the project-based stuff, we know those agreements that we're signing are to protect the general contractor and stuff like that. And these agreements aren't much like that. I mean, they're more of a partnership, right? These agreements aren't trying to pull one over on your customer, because in service, we're looking for longevity. We're looking for long-term customers. So I don't want to forget Gabe, though. I'd like to introduce him from Build Ops. We're a Build Ops customer. We've been on Build Ops for 3 years now, and they have a good service and maintenance platform that helps with a lot of this stuff. It helps us with tracking, which we can talk about later when we talk about customer retention.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question for you guys, Toby, Sean, Fred. What kind of pitfalls have you seen in structuring these maintenance agreements? You know, as somebody who maybe is coming in, hasn't done any maintenance agreements before, what kind of pitfalls have you guys seen?
First and foremost is getting an understanding of how to write the service agreement, and making sure that I'm structuring a service agreement that is budget friendly to the customer that I'm meeting with. You know, I've said this 1,000 times, is that contractors love to give prices that customers can't sign off on. So they continue to give them the wrong price on things. And one of the things with structuring these maintenance agreements is that everybody that's on this call has to understand that in developing a maintenance agreement is a very consultative sales process. There is a lot of question-based selling that is going on in front of that customer, where you have to figure out what are the needs of that customer, where are the hurts, where are the gaps, you know, how can we help them, how can we partner with those particular people, and getting an understanding of what that customer's needs are, and then delivering that right price for them in regard. There's nothing more frustrating for a customer that wants to work with you, and you put down a $20,000 agreement and they have 10,000 bucks they can work with. There's nothing more frustrating for customers. So, understanding that, yes, that we're trying to get people to be 70B compliant. I can't defer maintenance for longer than 5 years. 70B has done an amazing thing for us this time around also, folks. They have placed everything into a condition category, right? I have serviceable, limited service, and non-serviceable. And that has done wonders for the pull-through side and the repair side of what it is that we're talking about here. So there's lots of movement with this. Gosh, Gabe, I hope I answered your question the right way.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Sean, just to build on that, for lots of years, 70B was merely a recommendation. And then 2 years ago, it became a standard. And in the process of becoming standard, they rearranged an awful lot of the document in the way that you're speaking, and it's made it a very workable thing. And so the only thing I would add to that, Gabe, is that if you take something like our group called Great Service Forums, which is a group of electrical contractors that come together just involved in service and maintenance, you have other contractors who are involved in the business who have existing agreements already, who don't mind sharing them with you. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's a good idea if you have a colleague across town or across the country who already has one going and doesn't mind sharing it with you. That's a good idea, because there could be one little thing in there which makes a big difference if you have it in or don't have it in.
Yep.
Yeah, and I noticed with our service agreements that they're, and like sort of what Sean was saying, they're very custom to the customer, right? And for us, we've noticed that our customers are sort of lenient, or they're scared of when we start bringing contracts and stuff like that, because all their contracts that they've always been of like, I don't know, they haven't been in their favor, right? And we're trying to do something in their favor. So it's a lot of selling and talking. It's not just walk up, drop a, 3 sheets, 10 sheets, a whole binder of a program on them and say, here you go, go ahead and send me 50 grand right now. We'll get started. So, it's a lot more of a process that I think a lot of contractors just aren't really used to. Even as service guys, what we've always, like the service guys in our company are more like the heroes that run in and fix something when it's broken, right? Where the maintenance guys are a little bit different. So structuring that agreement is really important, and you got to take your customer and tailor it to them and understand that they're going to be a little defensive, and they got budgets to deal with too, right? Like Sean says, and we're noticing that a lot of our customers don't have electrical budgets. They don't have electrical maintenance budgets at all, right? They've always turned on that light switch and the light comes on. It's never broken, right? And so it's a little bit different for them. It's new. We've had a lot of luck talking with the CFOs and the people like that, because they like budgets, right? So this helps.
Yeah.
And of course, Toby, it's great to land that first customer and all the complications that are involved in their systems and keeping them going. And now you get to the second one, and you have more to keep track of, and hopefully third and fourth and so forth. And one of the things which I think will come through in what we're talking about today is you need something like the build-up system to keep track of all this. There's an awful lot to track in the maintenance and service of systems, and you can't do it any other way. That's the beauty of being in the business today, that you can have a product like this that you can use. I can tell you that when I started the business, we didn't have this, and it made an entirely different picture as far as service and maintenance was concerned.
Yeah. I will say this in regards to structuring, these standards are popping out every 3 years, and at the very least, when you're structuring your service agreements, they should be 3-year agreements at the very least. Can I have a 5-year agreement? Yeah. Can I have a 10-year agreement? Yeah. I guess I could have a 10-year agreement, but at the very least, you should never let an agreement leave your office for less than 3 years. And that's where the recurring revenue part comes in. The renewals come in for that electrical contractor. And also, if I'm putting together a 3-year program for my customer, I'm developing their budgets for years 2 and years 3, because like Toby just said, it's very difficult at first for these customers. They have mechanical budgets, they have IT budgets, they have fire alarm budgets, they have budgets for elevators, they have budgets for their gen sets. They have all these budgets, but none of that works without electrical, which is the ironic part of this, right? So, setting their budgets for years 2 and years 3, when it was so hard to figure out what that budget in year 1 is, a very, very big deal. When customers know what they need to spend in years 2 and years 3, because you've developed that on the front end of things, that's very palatable for customers. And it isn't that customers don't have the money, folks, that are on this call. Customers have the money, because if they have something that goes down and second shift at 2 o'clock in the morning, guess what? They're going to find the money to get that fixed. 100% guarantee that. So it isn't that they don't have the money, it's that they weren't planning on spending that money with you. And it's our jobs as you guys as contractors to figure out, what is that pain point, and structuring that service agreement is all based on that pain point. Are they at $1 million an hour business interruption? Are they at $500,000 an hour business interruption? If that corrugated box machine fails, how does that affect their business? So structuring these service agreements has everything to do with their business interruption costs and all these other variables that go along with developing that scope and what that kind of looks like. Would you agree with that, Toby?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're trying to offer them predictability. Really, that's what it comes down to, right? We're just trying to offer them predictability, and that's where like having a software to track all that stuff is extremely important, because if you're going to try to track all that stuff through a spreadsheet, you're going to spend hours and days, but it's interesting. We have one customer, and they kept kicking us back on service agreements, and because we kept trying to set them up as monthly budgets, and because they said they didn't want yearly budgets, so we just assumed they wanted a monthly invoice, but to find out that accounting wanted quarterly. And they already had numbers and everything already set up for quarterly budgets and that's how they did their mechanical and all that other stuff. But we never structured our service agreement that way because we didn't know, right? But it was just more that asking questions and having the data. Like if you have existing customers too, you can already go back and look, oh man, we've worked on this switchgear a bunch of times already in the last few years. We worked on this chiller a bunch of times over the last few years. Like you can already start structuring that based on what the information you already have for what you've been working on.
And Toby, just building on that, without data, as somebody once said, you're just another guy with an opinion. One of the beauties of having the kind of software system we're talking about here is if one of your people happens to go, and that happens from time to time, all this data doesn't walk out the door with them. You have what you can use then to pick up where you left off and hopefully not miss a step in the process. So it's important to maintain what you have, and it's also something which will allow you to scale your service and maintenance business. It's one thing to have recurring revenues. My barber has recurring revenues, but my barber can't do a very good job of scaling the business. You can scale a service and maintenance business if you have this sort of tool to do it with.
Yeah. And I think so too, being very, educating yourself as contractors on where does it say within both standards that I should be performing maintenance? Where does it say in the standards that I have to have my team train electrical safety? Where does it say in the standards that I have to develop that I've developed my arc flash, my safety program? Where does it say in the standards that I have to keep an updated one-line drawing? All those things, being in front of a customer, the customer go, where does it say? Where does it say that? Well, I need to go, and I'm going to give you guys a quick example, and that's the reason why I think this makes sense. If anybody has their 70E books with them, if I go to Article 205.4, General Maintenance Requirements, electrical equipment shall be maintained in accordance with manufacturer's instructions or industry consensus standards to reduce the risk of associated failure. If I go to G underneath Article 205.4, it says incident energy analysis method. The incident energy analysis shall take into consideration the characteristics of the overcurrent protected device and its fault clearing time, including its condition of maintenance. So right there, and you're basically going to read the same exact thing in 70B, where it says, look at this is where it says in these articles that I have to maintain my equipment. Those are very powerful sales tools. I think the most underutilized sales tools that we have is both 70E and 70B. When I can recite the articles and what those articles say in front of potential prospects, and that's the most powerful, part of educating that could really happen in front of potential buyers, man. It's not just me saying it. It's what the standards are telling me,
I'm gonna chime in here now. I'm gonna be the disliked member of the panel, I guess, because I'll be interrupting this. This is an awesome conversation. This is why we posted that poll as well, because we can't get to everything as detailed as we want to. We want to make sure things are snappy. But for all of you who said you did want to hear more, we'll definitely follow up. A couple more housekeeping before we transition to the next session. Number one, again, Q&A. We have actually a question here, and I'm going to get to that in one moment and bring it to the panel. But we have Q&A. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, again, just use that Q&A button at the bottom. Number two, and kind of trying to frame how to structure this thought in my head. This is designed specifically to be very much conversational between the panel. Like there was not detailed talking points of what we're going to discuss. It was on purpose meant to be very much a conversation. So when someone like Sean brings up something, Gabe might have a question, Fred might have, it's supposed to be like that. So it uncovers reality rather than a structured lecture and presentation. As a result, usually here at BuildOps, what we do is we ship out an email right after, or maybe the morning after presentation with the recording and saying like, here's some great things we learned. I want to make sure that email that's sent out to you actually represents what we learned here. So it might be a couple days before I actually email it to you guys. But just for example, like Sean, and I might include the quote from Fred about his barber and recurring revenue, but Sean has some great points. And I want to make sure that we are factoring into the email. So like, yes, you'll get the recording to the webinar and you'll actually get a recording, a copy of the deck as well. But my goal is to give you a nice little snapshot of all the takeaways as well that you can share with your team as well. So just housekeeping for that. Lastly, we're going to move over to the next session. I think Sean's staying with us. Gabe, you can stay with us if you want to. You can hop out. More the merry for everyone. Toby, if you want to drive, 2 slides is fine. We're already behind. I knew we would be. All right, so we're bringing in back one, Toby. We're bringing in Megan from BuildOps as well. And again, I think Sean is staying with us. And we also, by the way, folks, have Glenn here from BuildOps as well. And he's kind of lurking in the back, but I think at this point he might actually start piping up a little bit. With that, I'm setting my watch to 20 minutes, maybe a little bit shorter. We'll see. I'm going to bow out, Fred, Toby, and the rest of you all. Go on. Again, folks, Q&A. So, sorry about that. One question, folks. Is there any industry enforcement for these NFPA 70E and 70B standards? That's the question out there right now. Is there any industry enforcement for these NFPA 70E and 70B standards?
Well, there is one way of speaking, RC, and that is insurance companies are starting to ask their clients what they're doing about this. And there's nothing more compelling than having your insurance underwriter asking what you're doing.
Yeah, we just finished up a big like 2 megawatt solar system, and the insurance company wouldn't even insure it until they had they didn't call it 70B, but until they had a maintenance plan in place and a contract signed. And so yeah, you're starting to see more of the insurance companies enforcing this. I mean, Sean, you probably speak better about this than I mean, the way I was always taught about and all the NFPA standards is that they're the standards, they're the writing. It's it's OSHA, it's the fire departments, it's those guys that are the police force. They're the ones that come and tell us what to do, and we see it with regular NEC, right? Like there's no NEC police coming around telling us our electrical works right or wrong, and we're dealing with the building inspectors and stuff like that. So in this case, OSHA would be and the fire department, I guess, would be your enforcement.
Yeah, I think that OSHA, understand that OSHA is not that OSHA is only going to enforce OSHA standards. They're not going to look at a document such as like 70B and cite an employer for not following section 9.2.1, for instance. What they will do is if in the event somebody gets hurt, they're going to figure out did you follow the manufacturer's recommendations for electrical equipment maintenance, and has it created an unsafe work condition for that particular facility. So it's all about getting red flagged in the worst way possible. I hope that makes sense,
The question by Brian is actually great tie-in for this next session. So I want to bring in Megan to the fold here. Megan from BuildOps, and the question from Brian that you all should factor in this conversation about selling service maintenance agreements is, how do you factor in ROI on these programs? Clients ask for this a lot. How will the NFPA 70B program save them money? Well, if you can save them money, that's obviously a great way to sell these things to them. So with that, I'm bowing out, and the clock is ticking.
That's a great question. I would love to take the lead on. I'll give somebody else.
If you want to take the lead on it, I will let you do that. Go for it, buddy.
Yeah, anybody that's an electrical contractor on here understands there's lots of ways to create return on investment for their customers. And the only way to do that is to educate your customers. First and foremost is that we all know what the lead times are on assets right now. How long is it in the event that they have a switchgear section fail, a drive, a motor? What's the lead time on that, and what's the cost of that? Would it cost them far less to put together a program and maintain it, or to have it fail and then to try to get those particular assets in a reasonable time frame? We all know what the answer to that is. ROI also is getting an understanding, like we said earlier. Now, this is an extremely consultative sale. I mean, if I have a customer that has a $500,000, $1 million, and $2 million a day business interruption, but I can put together a program for them that costs between $8,000 to $10,000 and covers 50 different components, that makes perfect sense to me. I think that there's a reason why mechanical agreements, IT, elevator, why were all those agreements put in place? That's a really fair question. So, Mr. Customer, why do you have an HVAC agreement? Well, because we can't afford to have things fail. Well, why do you have an elevator agreement? Same reason. Why do you have IT agreement? Same exact reason. Well, how did you guys determine the ROI on that? The ROI on that is the same exact mentality of, in the event that those fail, how does that affect your business? And you don't know that unless you're asking the right questions. And that's how you're going to sell these service agreements. I'm sure there's all of us online here can go off into the weeds on that one. I'm sure, especially Fred and Toby and others. But yeah, I think that's where contractors get stymied the most, is they don't know how to. And that's the other thing. If we can't get past objections, you can't close deals, folks.
Well, I think you hit it on the head. You can redirect that question very easily by talking about the cost of downtime.
Sure.
Cost of unpredictable downtime there. Whereas versus predictable downtime, when it fits into their schedules, maybe they're shut down in their plant, that type of thing, to have that predictable downtime, what doesn't cost them the cost of production time, those costs. So you can redirect that question very easily by pushing on to the other benefits. Service is a benefit sale. It's a question sale. It's a very consultative sale, but it's also a very benefit focused sale. And less about the hard, there are the hard dollars because they are signing a check and signing an agreement with you, but it is more about the benefits, the predictable downtime, reliability, the safety factors, those type of things. So redirect it too as well.
And Megan, speaking of downtime, it doesn't have to be a long time. If you're in certain businesses, and let's take, for example, somebody who is a produce distributor, if they're down 1 or 2 days, they're going to have certain customers who never invite them back. Somebody replaces them and they're replaced forever. So there is one thing to have business interruption insurance, and incidentally, that doesn't go to cover all the cost that's involved. Doesn't even come close.
Try collecting on it. That's the other.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Try collecting on it.
Try collecting on it.
So even if you get it, it's not gonna cover what your losses are. But really and truly, there are some people who are distributors who know that if they can't deliver, that may be it for certain accounts.
Yeah, Fred, that's a really good point. As the contractors that are online here, getting a good understanding of who your customers and clients are has everything to do with who you focus on in selling these. There's a lot of vertical markets out there, different vertical markets out there, but there's really three vertical markets that have the shortest sales cycles and the highest need for selling and for selling service agreements and them seeing value in buying. And that's healthcare, manufacturing, and distribution. It isn't that schools don't have a need. It isn't that data centers don't have a need. It isn't that different municipalities don't have a need. They all have a need for this stuff. Those also have very long sales cycles. So when you look at manufacturing, healthcare, and you look at distribution, those are all three vertical markets that have the highest impact of business interruption and life safety. And what happens if they don't move forward in this agreement? We talk about this in our master class, and Fred was just in our master class. Anybody that's out there selling service agreements right now, this is a big deal, and I kind of want to give this nugget to everybody. Please understand that when you're selling service agreements, selling the service agreement isn't about what that customer is going to get when they move in your direction. It isn't that they're going to get this great service agreement and they're going to get infrared and they're going to get maybe ultrasonic and visual and the highest trained people. Those are all great things. But the impact of selling service agreements has to be on what happens if they choose not to move in your direction. That's how you need to leverage these service agreements. If they choose not to do this, how does that affect their business? That's the leverage here. It isn't the bells and whistles of what goes into a service agreement. It's getting those folks that you're selling to a better understanding. If they say no to this, what does that do to their facility? How does that affect their workers? How does that affect life safety? How does that affect their production? How does that affect the widgets that they're kicking out? Loss is far more compelling than gain in sales. And when you get customers to understand that, they'll start listening, because then they understand the impact. I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense. And Sean, the other thing is that when we're talking about compliance with 70B, compliance is not the contractor complying with it. Compliance is all about the owner of the facility complying with it, and the contractor helping him do that. And so it's important to remember when you're talking to customers, it's their obligation to comply, and you're there to help them.
Sure.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think to expand on what Sean is saying, the difference between project selling and selling service is that you really do take your customer on a journey, and they have to see from the why, the benefits, because again, back to what Toby said, they want the light to turn on. And as long as the light's turning on, they don't really see what you do. They don't understand what you're doing in the background to make sure that that light turns on. So you have to take them through that journey of what you're going to do and what they're going to see. And that see is not necessarily dollars, but the lights will turn on every time the computers turn on, your process equipment. It's not going to go down. And so you have to toot your own horn through that process. And you can do that through your sales documentations and presentations and stuff. But you really do have to take that customer on a journey to really understand and tell a story for them to understand exactly what they're getting out of this.
Yeah.
And that's what that's part of developing your sales documentation. Even you can even throw it into your proposal documents and really kind of create some dynamic sales documents to take them along on that journey to get them to that yes and that signature.
Yeah. I think Toby and Fred and everybody would agree that you have to have a sales process.
Right.
The way to selling service agreements is being able to have a sales process, a step-by-step process of onboarding that particular customer and walking them through that experience. And it's not a secret. That's not what contractors normally do. Contractors like to put together numbers and push numbers out. And again, this is a selling service agreements is a consultative process that there's particular steps that you have to hold the customer's hand through in order to get to next steps. It really is. If the folks that are online here today don't have a sales process, I'd be more than happy to talk with you about that, but you have to develop a sales process for that. It's the only way to help figure out where you're at.
And Megan,
go ahead.
speaking of that journey, Megan, your journey, incidentally, is a beautiful journey because it's you and the customer in the car. you're not in the bus with a bunch of other contractors from other trades, hoping that they'll get their work done so you can get to what you were supposed to do. The beautiful thing about service and maintenance is it's you and the customer, and you're dealing directly with the customer, not through an intermediary in the form of a general contractor or somebody else. It's you and the customer, and that's a nice way to have it.
Well, back to what Sean was saying, it is very documented how to sell service agreements from starting from that qualifier visit, which is that first time that you get to go in and ask all those questions and start to find out what's going on in that facility, that organization, going into that survey to get those assets in, and then coming back to your customer with asset reports. And from that, you get to build the rest of your proposal, because based off of those conditions is based off the intervals, and the intervals then and what needs to be done based off of standards. And now you're starting to build from that very beginning of the process, building each piece of and to that final signature. But you have to take each step in that process and not skip them, because that's going to get you to yes more often. And, tracking that, I am going to do a little shameless plug here about, we do have a very robust CRM product that does help you manage those steps and manage those processes all the way through to get to the end results, but making sure you don't skip those different steps in the process of that sale, and being able to document those questions, document those assets, get those cool documents back in their hands, the proposal documents back in their hands too, in a timely fashion, and being able to manage that process too as well, which is just as important to getting to yes.
Well, Megan, incidentally, that's a good point that you brought up about the CRM component of what you got, because it really all has to start there at the beginning and continue on through. The key word here is not excellence, like a lot of people like to put on the side of their truck. The word that means more to people than anything else is consistency. If you can deliver your product and deal with your customer on a consistent manner, that means more than anything else. And that's the benefit of having this sort of a tool. And incidentally, it is a tool, and it should be looked at that way, because you can't imagine going out on a job with certain other things. And this is the sort of thing that you have to look at as just one of those other tools that you supply that makes a big difference.
And it does, it goes back to Sean and Toby and everybody from that first session of how to structure that agreement to create templates and create standardization in that, but also create personalization in that too as well. And then from there, being consistent in your process and managing that process and making sure that you're getting that done and all the way through to the end, and making sure you don't miss anything in those proposal documents. Make sure you're not missing anything in those estimates, so you're not underpricing this and missing different pieces and steps to it. And that you need a tool to take it from start to finish.
I agree, Megan. I think that the start to that is getting an understanding for these contractors, for you guys as contractors. What is 70B providing us, and what is again, what is 70E providing us? Because unless you know those things, and isn't that you got to be the subject expert at that stuff, but you have to get an understanding of what those two documents offer you guys as contractors, because that's going to help you write your service agreements.
Hello, everyone.
He's back.
I wish I had a buzzer. I should have had a buzzer. I didn't do this well enough. I needed a buzzer. Anyway, yes, we're at time. We're actually now back on target. So this is fantastic. This has been a great chat. And so for those of you in attendance, I think you might have figured it out. We launched that poll just before I come on, just to give you a heads up that we are kind of running out of time. So that if you want to hear more, we're more than happy to extend this conversation offline as well. So thanks for all for contributing to that poll. I did want to, before we move over and thank Megan for her contribution, I did want to mention there is a lingering question that I'd love to get answered from the panel, if you don't mind. Aren't these OSHA citable events now? This was posed during the first session, but question from Daniel is, aren't these OSHA citable events now?
Well, I think that, anytime that you have an accident in your facility, that's always going to be an OSHA is always going to be a red flag. But like I had mentioned before, is that OSHA is only going to enforce OSHA standards. That's what they're there to do. So, is OSHA going to recognize that you didn't have something in place that created an unsafe work condition around those particular in that area or around those facilities or around those machines? Absolutely. But OSHA is only going to enforce OSHA standards.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So move on. Toby, if you can drive a little bit, couple slides. I'm sure Megan's done seeing her face on on the screen there. You can go one more over. We'll add that to what we send to the folks later. All right, so introducing Glenn now to the conversation. And those who have to hop, you can hop as far as the panel is concerned. Appreciate your time. If you want to stay, by all means, please stay. OSHA 5A1 by Jerry, just bringing that up. I'm not sure if that means anything, but bringing that up. Anyway, so this particular Fred, we crafted this particular session based on a conversation you and I had that really piqued my interest, and I kind of shopped it around to Glenn, and it also piques his interest as well. Context for the folks in attendance: Glenn is a seasoned expert beyond just technology as well. He's been in your boots, if you will, as well. So he's really experienced on understanding the pains and challenges and the opportunities. So this conversation is a little bit going beyond just thinking about profits and thinking about how you can actually build an enduring business with customers who trust you. And I don't want to steal any more thunder, so I'm going to leave it at that. Timer is on. We are doing pretty well, but again, Q&A is open for you all to contribute, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Fred, Toby, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's been doing service for a long time knows that, you know, you're trying to save that customer. You want them to be long-term, right? So, you know, the money will come, but you really want to try to be keep that customer, because the onboard that customer, like with 70B, it's a lot of money to get that person to sign that contract. But if you can have them keep just re-upping every 3 years, and it pays for itself really quick. So I mean, in service business, we try to be the customer's partner, right? More than just some contractor or some vendor.
Exactly. And, you know, just to kind of build on that, Toby, you know, in a way, this isn't about switchgear and transformers and various other kinds of electrical apparatus. This is about the well-being of the people who walk by these things every day and could really be seriously injured, if not worse, if something happened. This is about the property that is all around that equipment, which could burn down sometimes, and this happens. There are really thousands of fires that are caused by electrical systems. And as I mentioned earlier, this is about the reputation of your company. If you are the owner of a facility that has something like that happens, because it's a reflection on your company if it does. And so, yes, it's about a lot of hard assets. And as was pointed out earlier, one of the most compelling reasons to maintain your electrical system is because if something does go bad, you may be a long time waiting for a replacement, a long, long time today. And everybody doesn't fully appreciate those wait times, but that can put a facility out of operation for quite a while.
Good point, Fred. This is, by the way, this measuring success beyond profit is a trick question. And the reason why I look at it as a trick question is that, you know, having your back end processes and your back end procedures in place, where it may not automatically drive instant revenue or instant transaction, by having those back end policies and procedures in place, it automatically is at somewhere down that customer journey is going to be profit for you guys as contractors. I think that's one of them. Just to be brutally honest, is where a lot of electrical contractors really drop the ball, is especially contractors on this call that have service departments where you're consistently going out and solving issues for customers. If you're going to go out and solve an issue for a customer, panel replacement, get them back online something crazy happened from an emergency perspective, don't just go out there and fix it and then leave and send them a bill. Figure out how to develop those and structure an existing maintenance agreement, or figure out, okay, well then how do we follow up with this particular person? Why did it happen? When's the last time they had maintenance? Who is the person that always gives us a call on the emergency calls? What do our back end processes look like at my contracting business to follow up on all of the no-brainer service calls that are coming in and day out? How do I capitalize on those? So I think that developing the back end processes and the procedures of the actual handoffs, literally, what does that look like? Because that's gonna drive revenue, and it's gonna drive profit moving forward if you can get those back end processes figured out. I hope that makes sense.
Well, Sean, it does. And looking back on the lots of service agreements that you've sold in your lifetime, when would be the best time to sit down and talk with them about having an agreement that they didn't have if you've just been in fixing something on an emergency?
I think the best time to get with customers in anything is either a job closeout, design build opportunities. If I have just remedied something from an emergency perspective, the first thing that I want to do is introduce them to the next step or the next person in my organization that can help them, put together that particular program or write that particular electrical maintenance, scope to where we can get them on. Those are the things that contractors are dropping the ball on. Also, Fred, we talk about in the masterclass the difference between reoccurring revenue and recurring revenue.
Yeah.
And there's no money in reoccurring revenue. There's money in recurring revenue, and your service calls are your reoccurring revenue, but there's no recurring revenue that you're obtaining from that, and that's what contractors. It's right there in front of them, but unfortunately they choose to just go on to the next call or the next project when those opportunities are right in front of them.
I'm glad you said that, Sean, because that's one of our biggest roadblocks too, is when we talk to our customers about these plans, they say, well, you're always here when something breaks. You always get us out of whatever jam we're in.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for years. And so, so that's a really good point, that you should be following up right afterwards and saying, we could have prevented this, or these are the steps to, but it's hard because especially service guys, we want to be heroes, right?
Yeah. Or even here's one. Let's say you put a lighting retrofit together. You develop the scope of the lighting retrofit, you install the lighting retrofit. What's your plan to follow up with that customer? Do you have a 3-month or a 6-month walkthrough planned, or a follow-up to where you close that lighting retrofit deal and you go, Fred, thanks so much. We just completed a lighting retrofit today. Just letting you know, as part of our service, we're going to follow up with you. We're going to have an on-site walkthrough with you within the next 3 months to make sure everything's working correctly, make sure you don't need anything else, make sure X, Y, and Z are happening. Just by having a 3 or 6 month plan or a walkthrough even after a project is contractors don't do. The biggest thing that you can do is have continuous connection points with your customers. So whether it's maintenance or a simple project that you're doing, what's your plan to get back in and continue to hold the hand of that particular customer? I mean, that's a very fair question,
And part of the solution to that is if you have a service organization and you have a construction organization, you have one company but two businesses. Service and maintenance is a business unto itself. New construction is a business unto itself. They both can work very well together. Again, as a matter of fact, can be hand in glove with each other as far as developing business for each other. But the reality is you have one company and two businesses, and you have to look at it that way. And when you do that, service organization will jump in and follow up on these things and see the opportunities and keep your customers out of trouble.
Yeah.
And the problem is that very often people start a service group and they'll put the chief estimator of the construction group in charge of service. And then that day comes where he says, hey, boss, do you want me to finish this big proposal, or would you like me to work on this little service job over here? And it doesn't work. You have to basically recognize that there's two businesses there. There's two different kinds of models. It takes two organizations, even in a small company, to do it. But if you have that division, you'll be very successful.
I agree.
Yeah, and I should probably introduce Glenn Tipton since he's on our slide here from Build Ops.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. Yeah, I've just been kind of listening to you guys as the industry professionals here. I think one thing that comes to my mind is, thinking about, again, this topic, like, measuring success beyond profit, is like thinking that the compliance side is really, it's not up to the contractor, it's compliance for the owner of the building, the owner of those assets, and providing them with all this information to be able to, show what you've quoted, show what you're servicing, what you maintained, gives them that confidence that their equipment is maintained efficiently, and that if they get audited or something like that, they have the right information at their fingertips. Am I understanding all that correctly?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, Glenn, there's a lot of very good and capable construction contractors who do some pretty sophisticated new construction work. And you go down the hallway to their service department and they're doing everything off a whiteboard. Same company. And what's important is that they realize that they're missing opportunities in increasing the value of their company. If you do a big construction job, what you end up with is profits, hopefully, and a nice picture of the job you just did. If you have a service organization which continues to grow with, as Sean would tell you, recurring revenues, you're building value in a company that does not get built the same way when all you're doing is big new construction projects. Yeah. And once again, the only way you're going to do that is if you have the sort of tool we've been talking about all day here, because that's what'll make a difference.
Yeah, 100%. Okay.
No. I'm just agreeing with Fred. That's all.
Yeah, I was gonna, kind of shamelessly, plug a little bit more of the software side in here. I think that's one of the big value drivers that we see across the industry, and something that, I think BuildOps does exceptionally well, is that projects and service in the same place. So as you finish that new construction job and you need to go back and reflect on your submittals and reflect on your, testing and balancing and everything else that goes into that construction project, now you have that available at the fingertips of your field guys when they go in and when you sell those agreements and when you go into maintenance any of that equipment.
Yeah. I think also, dear, too, when you look at measuring success, one of the big ways of measuring success is when people are comfortable in giving you, in referring you to other people in their industry or the people that they know. Measuring, I have a good friend of mine says it isn't who you know, is who's glad they know you. And that's extremely true. That there's not a lot of contractors or salespeople that ask for the referrals that they should be getting. If you're a problem solver for somebody and you have a happy customer, the first thing you want to do is turn them into a client. And the way to do that is to ask for referrals from the people that you're solving problems from. And if you can do that and gain consistency out of that, that makes for a much easier life from a contracting and from a sales perspective. So, measuring success is all about who's glad that they know you, and will want to say, hey, look, Fred just solved this problem for me. Toby just solved this problem for me. You should call them. And I think that contractors don't do a good enough job at asking the folks that they're solving problems for, who else do you know, Mr. Customer, that is having the same issues or having the same problems at their facility? Who else can you recommend us to? And I think that's a big deal, I'm
gonna chime in here. That's a great way it's a great time to cut it off. There's a lot more we can go into in this particular session that we'd love to dive into. So I think there'll be a poll question coming up in a moment, but there are also actually a good number of questions that we'd love to get through from the crowd today. If this is a session now, this is almost 3 minutes away from the top of the hour. If you have any any questions, use the Q&A. We'll get to them right now. We'll dedicate the next couple of minutes for that. But there are a couple of questions out here that I want to make sure the panel is aware of. First of all, I wanted to just bring up that Ryan mentions that if it's a new project, it's going to require a study as a line item. That's also a great time to talk to the folks about service contracts since they need it created already. Thanks, Ryan, for that contribution. And Jeremy asked, Sean, are you able to rattle off your top 3 sections of 70E standards that if used strategically might lead your customer in the right direction with regard to the importance of an electrical maintenance program in their workplace?
Can you just read that off to me again? Just say that again.
Yep. Rattle off your top 3 sections of 70E standards that if used strategically might lead your customer in the right direction with regards to the importance of an electrical maintenance program in their workplace.
Absolutely. First thing they want to do is they want to go to Article 105.3, employer responsibility when it comes to electrical safety. The next thing they'd want to do is go to Article 205.4, which is general maintenance requirements. And then Article 130.5, which is arc flash. So I think that knowing those articles are huge. That's also not a fair question because there's really about a top 6 to 10 out of these standards that folks need to be highlighting with markers so that they can get to those articles and those pages very quickly when they're in front of customers. I'd be more than happy to share that with anybody that's online here. That's be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, Sean, if you can share that with us, we can package that into the post-event email. I'd love to do that. And by the way, as well, I will that answer, Jeremy, I'll package into the email again. Why it might take a couple of days for us to actually get that sent out to you.
Sure.
Zach says, I'm a newbie when it comes to SMAs. Do successful offerings also include a certain number of service calls as a way to sweeten the pot for a client? What works?
Wow. I don't know if I understand the question.
So on top of proactive maintenance, are you including any type of service calls inside that contract too as well? Almost like pushing into a more of a encompassing service agreement versus just a proactive maintenance, preventive maintenance.
For us, it's hard because it's very customer specific, right? So it's hard to give a blanket answer of saying, yes, we always give 8 hours of service a month, 8 hours of service a year or whatever, because it's based on the customer. I mean, if that's what's going to make your customer feel good about it, or if you have the data because you have a software, you track your data well enough that you can say, okay, we consistently are here at least once a week for an hour, once a month for 2 hours, and you could probably build that into it. But it's hard to just give a blanket statement like, yes, that's what you should do.
Toby, are you how often are you specifying, response time and things like that though, like within your agreements? Is that something that you often factor into those things?
We don't, because we've always just built the business on like really fast response times, couple hours we try. So it's just sort of like all our customers know we do everything we can get to get them as fast as possible. So, but it's also a level of emergency, right? If one light's out in the bathroom and they have 4, like we're not dropping everything we're doing to get to them, right? So, but yeah, no, I mean, we try to get to our customers when they have emergencies as fast as possible. So we don't put it in the agreement either.
I know it's the top of the hour, so we're gonna end this right now. Toby, if you want to just go to the last slide of the deck, this works for me. I know there are a couple existing questions out there. We'll try to answer those offline. I want to make sure I just respect everyone's time. Oh yeah, appreciate that, Toby. You can go to the next slide though. It's all right. So if you scan that, you can get a little bit more information about Build Up specifically. If you're interested in hearing more about what we offer, Toby, I know is an existing customer as well, and is more than happy to speak about how we've helped him as well in his business. Other than that, I encourage you all to follow us on LinkedIn and social media, et cetera, and learn more about these programs. We're doing more of these programs. And if you have anything that you want to contribute yourself, if you think you make a good panelist, we'd love to have you by all means. These kind of fluid conversations are really helpful, I think. It helps, dispel these myths that we have, and also helps us all feel like, we're not alone. So I appreciate you all attending, and look out for an email in a few days with a bunch of information that summarizes the key takeaways. Thank you so much for everyone here who led this discussion. Really appreciate it. And thanks for all who attended. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Everyone.
Thanks for getting all this